Welcome, Alexandre. It's an honor having you here in the house.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Thank you all for being here. It's a great pleasure and an honor. I also would like to thank the amazing staff and the assemblage who are friends of mine as well and people that I love and have worked with before. This is a very unique place in the city, the assemblage, and there will be 2 other buildings coming up soon. I gather one in January and the second one next summer. It's a significant place, and it will become more and more significant because of their ethos, because of their integrity, because of what they offer to the community and the type of community they're interested in building in New York City and inspiring others. The best thing we can do is to inspire others, be in service, and to act with integrity and with deep interest in knowledge. Knowledge is the true power. Today's talk will be about knowledge, connected to sound, consciousness, and spirituality, which to me they're inseparable. There will be a few other themes that I will talk about. Pardon me, let me drink some water. So, the talk that I usually give, I like to give, is always a multidisciplinary talk. A talk that's based on a syncretic approach to understand a variety of different things. Some of them may be clearly related and some seemingly unrelated. We are now at a point where we cannot afford anymore to be only specialists. We have lost very important things by zooming in too deeply. There's a reason why Renaissance men, it's not a good term. First of all, this practice started taking place long before the medieval period, where basically scholars would be interested in a wide variety of different subjects and know a lot about them. Perhaps astronomy, cosmology, mathematics, geometry, art, alchemy, medicine, so on and so forth. So I think there's more and more interest or movement, at least, to take a multidisciplinary research to understand the word, understand various fields in academia, in science, in shamanic societal beliefs and Eastern philosophies, and that has been my life's journey. This is not just a research for me as an ethnomusicologist, sound researcher. It's my own journey. I started doing it for my own self because I've been playing and studying music for a very, very long time. And I spent 12 years at the university doing 4 degrees in music. So what you'll hear about tonight is a lot of data that's synthesized based on a wide variety of different things. My training in music and life as well, and the other subjects that I studied at university that are not part of music. My field work in over 40 countries, and my scientific studies, which I'll show you bits and pieces, and my work with over 15,000 people so far, from whom I learned a lot through experience sharing and feedback. Gathering anecdotal data is very important, especially when we don't have the technology yet to understand sound and its impact on consciousness. So the material is incredibly exciting, revealing, empowering, and allows us to understand a bit, depending on how we're interested in going, how deep we're interested in going into the mysteries of the universe and of consciousness. So this is very, very important thing for people to know, but we have to remember that the material is complex. And I always do my best to simplify it, but I'm limited to how much I can simplify it, because if I go any further, I would be watering it down and then we lose the magic. So I will spend enough of time talking about it. Unfortunately, I cannot go into all of the details and the depth because of the limited time. But my hope is to inspire you, for you to research this to any extent you're interested in. I don't have anything to sell you. This is something to share with you. But please keep in mind that because the material is dense and convoluted and abstruse, it may shock you sometimes if your truth tells you something different. We shouldn't forget about something called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance in psychology is basically someone tries to tell me some truth that does not align with what I know, and I would be unable to let go of that truth. It would make me feel threatened, it would make me feel insecure. So what I would do, and normally what people do, they negate it as, no, that's wrong, or conspiracy theory, or, you know, he's a crackpot, or whatever. So feel free to be skeptical. It's not something that you are supposed to understand and accept right away. Not all of the material, just certain segments. But please take it upon yourself to research it later, to go deep into it. All important information functions like that, where we basically need to spend so much time. But for now, what you can do is don't be quick at saying yes or no. Just keep the I don't know open as a possibility as well. What's important is about connecting the dots. So if you see me, hear me, switching from one topic to another, you know, I'm not getting lost. I do this on purpose, just to show you the connection between different things, because what I aim for is a syncretic understanding by taking a multidisciplinary approach. So I do this on purpose. And I'll have a lot of slides with video and audio, and we'll have Q&A at the end. But I'd like to start with a short sound meditation, just to give you the experience of sound, but also, as Rodrigo said, and what I firmly believe, the power of sound is how it disconnects us from the unhealthy baseline, from the noise, and it shows us where signal is. Thank you very much. So I'd like you to be comfortable, whether you're standing or sitting down. And before we start, I'd like you to close your eyes. The most important thing in the experience is to listen attentively, judiciously, intentionally. Just like you're meditating. Huh? If a thought comes, whether it's important or unimportant, just let go of it and come back to the sound. When you're listening, try to surrender completely to the sound of the gong and listen to these various auditory pixels that we call harmonics. There are various frequencies that are generated by the gong. Okay, I will talk in detail about them. And I'd like you to observe every aspect of them, the register, how high or low they may be, or mid-range. Second, how soft or loud. The clouds of harmony that may seem like tonal painting. And how these clusters of harmonies change. Basically, that's how I'll be playing the gong, using different mallets to allow you to hear what sound consists of, how sound changes. But for you to have a powerful experience, you need to let go of any thought. If you're a meditator and you're used to using mantras, don't use a mantra or a sutra. Let the sound be that tool that you're focusing your awareness on, and allow yourself to sink so deeply into it. Without any judgment, focus your attention on the sensory experience, but not on your thoughts on the sensory experience. You may now close your eyes, please. And let's all take slow and deep breath. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Sorry it was short. I just wanted to start with sound and to give you that experience if you've never had this experience yet before we talk in great lengths about sound. I will be giving a longer sound meditation, about 3 hours, on December 20th at the beautiful Womb Center. It would start with a short talk and then proceed in a long sound meditation. If you're interested in that, you can see later David. He's the owner right here, our good friend. So, I'd like first to talk a bit about my background for those of you who don't know me, to understand a bit about what I do. But actually, before we do that, more important things to address spirituality, because this is basically what I'm interested in. I'm interested in deep spirituality and have been since I was a teenager. And I had a life journey very rich, which taught me a lot of things. And I've been deeply interested in all of these themes for quite a long time. And they've been growing and growing, and I'm still learning. There are many things that I still don't fully comprehend yet, so don't feel odd if you feel that the material is too difficult to grasp. These are some of the most important themes in human consciousness that the ancients took very seriously, and I'll address that aspect. So spirituality can be described in many different things. You can read 200 books and still not know enough about spirituality. But in most basic sense, what it is about is to go inward and get to learn about who we truly are beyond the facade of what we know of the self. It's a journey of self-discovery, a journey to get to understand the spirit inside of us and not outside. Unfortunately, a lot of people who are interested in spirituality these days are looking outside of them. Why? Well, that's the human condition. We need to make mistakes and learn from them. But not only that, there seem to be certain factors affecting people's spiritual journeys and interest in more less addressed things in the West. We can't study spirituality in schools. Unfortunately, that's something that needs to be taught in schools. Are we okay here? Yes. That's okay. So basically, my aim is to understand sound's impact on consciousness and how sound can teach us about what spirituality is, and to get to know our connection to nature and to the universe as a whole. So this is what spirit means. Okay. All right, so what is a spirit? You probably don't know that spirit has 25 different definitions. Here, these are the 25 different definitions. Can mean a wide variety of different things. The principle of conscious life, the incorporeal part of humans, soul regarded as separating, blah, 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 so on. This is the rest of them. I don't know why most people, when they hear spirit, they think it's a disembodied soul or disembodied energy. It's one of the definitions. But we need to think more of a spirit as it relates to the inside. If you, let's say, drink coffee in the morning, that change in your consciousness is a change of spirit. You are experiencing the spirit of coffee, if you want to use this word. But what it comes down to is that caffeine is a molecule that goes into specific receptors and it alters your consciousness and you feel different. And if you drink a glass of wine, then the ethanol is going to do that same role. So it's very important to understand that the most important thing in a spiritual experience, in any experience for that matter, is how the experiencer, the observer, is changed by the experiencer, the experience that one is witnessing outside of him or herself, seemingly outside. So this is the definition that I would like you to keep in mind here. I'd like to make sure that we're on the same wavelength. I like to pay attention to words. Words can create different consequences. Because words have different meanings, then it's impossible to ensure that everyone else is thinking of the same thing. So it's very important when we're dealing with something serious to define it, to clear the intention, to create an agreement that this is what we're talking about so that people don't think of something else. Similarly, what I call the practice that I do is sound meditation as a sound therapist and sound researcher. Sound meditation, that means you are doing something. Please keep in mind that I did not coin this term. There are many people who use it. You can use other terms, but as long as they are talking about what is happening to the individual receiving. Could be sound journey, or sound therapy, vibrational therapy, harmonic therapy. I don't encourage people to use more terms that are not clear, that are not empowering to the receiver. And these, unfortunately, these terms are the most commonly used, such as sound bath or sound healing, so on and so forth. But these two terms are the most commonly used. So sound bath does not describe so much what is happening. It's just someone is bathing in sound. And what is happening inside, in the individual? Is it talking about their state of mind, about what the individual needs to do? No. Sound healing can be deceptive and confusing and nebulous at least. Sound healing may suggest that the sound healer, which is not a term I would use at all. I'm a sound practitioner, sound therapist, but healers don't heal. Healers, as I understand it, they facilitate healing. They create a practice for the individuals to receive. They promote a certain mindset, a certain attitude. They give tools. They support the person. They create an experience, so on and so forth, but they don't heal. There may be some people, very few people with supernatural capacity in the world, where they can heal someone else without capitalizing on any power, without capitalizing on the power of the individual or on the power of placebo. Yes, I'm sure they exist, although I have not met one yet, even though I've traveled a lot. But for the most part, healers are healing facilitators. So facilitator is a good word to use. Going back to our saffron, so sound healing does not really describe who's healing who. It's deceiving. Is it the practitioner healing the individual? Is it the sound healing the individual without the person doing anything, the receiver? I don't believe in that at all. I believe that sound is a tool, that the more we know about it, the more we can use it as a tool to get the mind out of the way, to discover the inner world and wide variety of other things, and I'm going to talk about them later. So this is also the angle that I'd like to address first, so that we stay on the same wavelength and you understand where I'm coming from. It's that inner journey that we take with sound to help us understand who we are and what's our connection to the universe. My journey has been long. I'm still a student, I still learn, and I will always be an apprentice. I've studied music for quite a long time, and I was fortunate to be able to study music over 12 years at the university, doing 4 degrees. All of them have been in music. But because of that, I studied a wide variety of different things in music, from music theory, composition, performance, having performed on different instruments and played different musical styles, composed contemporary classical music and film music, and played classical and jazz and a variety of other musical styles. Eventually, when I started studying ethnomusicology, which is a field that studies music as a sociocultural phenomenon, And the ultimate goal is to understand human beings by studying culture through music. So you start to deal with the anthropological, the sociological, the psychological aspect of what kind of impact music has on people. Why music is important. This is one of the most important questions in ethnomusicology. Why is the human being musical? We don't know, but I'm starting to get ideas after all these years. And I'm skeptical. I like to take a wide variety of different angles and different methods to study something so incomprehensible such as sound and its impact on consciousness, right? It's hard for you to understand why you love that band. Why does that music, that style, that singer move you? Why do you describe music as being healing? Why are we obsessed with music? So there are many questions that we don't have full answers for them. So in this talk, we're going to explore all of these things. So when I started doing fieldwork, I started realizing differences between different harmonic systems and musical cultures. And I played some of these musical cultures and immersed myself in the act of understanding, like a native, without going native, but to really understand what these different musical styles are about and why do they sound different than Western music. The story is very, very complex, and I will touch a bit on that. But after many years of studying and traveling, I started paying attention to an area that a lot of people are not studying, not paying attention to. And this is something in the old days was called musica theorica, the theoretical study of music. This used to be part of the trivium and the quadrivium, which were the 7 liberal arts. I highly encourage you to look into them. I'm not going to address them now. But the third subject in the quadrivium, that quadrivium basically, well, I'll tell you briefly what they consist of. The trivium was a group of 3 topics, grammar, logic, and rhetoric. What they're concerned about is the person having the experience. How are they being impacted? Addressing the phenomenology, the mechanics of the experience. How is the person being moved by what he or she is observing? And the second group, the quadrivium, is geometry, arithmetics, music, and astronomy. These 4 subjects deal with the mathematical aspect of understanding the universe, understanding reality, understanding nature, consciousness. Why? Because everything is made of numbers. I'm sure many of you know this. And I'm going to talk about the mathematics and nature in a great amount of details. So the third subject, music, was not just music playing. That was there, which was called musica practica in Latin. Musica theorica is, what is music really about? It's the synthesis of what you know, all of these things to really understand what is the true role of music on consciousness. Why humans are dependent in it. Why is it used in all sorts of different experiences. So this is basically the field that I've immersed myself in, and I quite honestly, I didn't see it coming. I loved what I was doing before, playing, teaching, composing, and conducting and doing research, and I still love it. And now I just don't have the time. Now I'm infatuated with something far more exciting and revealing to me, and it's the most important thing that happened in my life, also the most difficult as well. And that's what I like to share with people. And so we're going to address a bit the mathematics in nature. Intelligence manifests in mathematical systems, and they're very complex. We're going to touch briefly on them. Fractal geometry is one we can start with. Is a branch of mathematics concerned with irregular patterns made of parts that are in some way similar to the whole, e.g. twigs and tree branches, a property called self-similarity or self-symmetry. This is something that was discovered by Benoit Mandelbrot, a French mathematician who later on came to the States and started working with IBM. These are some computer graphics made with fractal geometry. This is the Mandelbrot set, as it's called. And now I'm going to show you a short video. Well, I'm not gonna, it's actually 10 minutes long, but I'm not going to play the whole thing. Just a little snippet to show you what fractal geometry would allow you to experience, and what do they mean, what do they symbolize, and how are they part of reality. Here we're zooming into the Mandelbrot set, and every time you think, okay, now it's going to end, it's going to end, okay, now we're going to reach the bottom, and Chris keeps on going and going. Even though this is made by a computer, this actually is modeling how things work in reality. Based on mathematics, there is an infinite side to reality. It goes on forever and ever. I'll stop it right here, otherwise I'm going to lose it. I'm sure you got the idea. So, actually, I want to tell you something about fractal geometry before I go into the Fibonacci series. Fractal geometry allowed us to simulate reality. Without fractal geometry, we would not have CGI, computer-generated imagery. Which, what do they do in film? They simulate reality, they recreate reality. This is telling us what reality is made of. So mathematics are important, but I want you to keep in mind that what's there is not really mathematics, it's what we use to explain what's there. Very important distinction, okay? So it's not, the universe is not made of mathematics, it's mathematics what we use to understand the universe. But what seems to be there outside in the experience of consciousness are fields, phenomena, and circumstances, and so on. Mathematics is what we use to understand it, and that manifests in a wide variety of different intelligences. So the Fibonacci sequence or series is a sequence of numbers with surprisingly useful applications in botany and other natural sciences. So for example, you have 1 plus 1 equals 2, and then 2 plus the previous number equals 3, 3 plus the previous number equals 5, and so on and so forth. So this is what nature uses to manifest the complexity that we see in plants, in botany, in trees. And so this is an example of a nautilus section. What you have here is the 2 ones in the middle. 1 plus 1 equals 2, and then that next chamber becomes bigger based on 2 plus the previous number, which is 3, and so on and so forth, and it will give you something like this. The beautiful flow, the aesthetics, the intelligence, it's visual intelligence. But it's based on a very simple formula. This is how nature works. A basic system that would allow you to build very complex structures and art, if you will. This is another example. So the reason why this exists in nature is to ensure that the plant leaves are not going to cover the other leaves. Each one's going to get a certain amount of sunlight. Why? For the plant to survive. It needs photosynthesis. So you see, this system is not superfluous. It has a reason to exist, and it's very simple. But it's here understanding the complexity of the art of nature. Nature is the most amazing artist. And it goes far beyond what we're able to comprehend. So, and there's also here involved phi, the golden section or the golden mean. You have the golden angle, which is 137.5 degrees. So there's a leaf right here, and the next one will be here, and so on and so forth. So that no leaf would grow obstructing the other leaf and blocking the sunlight. Sunflower. Romanesco broccoli. Is this not art? So you have many things here. You have fractal geometry, golden mean, and Fibonacci series. Phi, it's the constant of the universe, that not only artists are interested in it, but also mathematicians, physicists, philosophers, and various scientists. It's what's been called the golden mean, the golden section, the golden ratio, which is 1.618033, goes on to infinity. This is probably the most important numbers or series of numbers in the universe. That's why it's called the constant of the universe. That is the springboard of the next intelligent system. It's the core of it. It's, I don't know what to call it, the point of inception of the harmonic series, which is the one we're going to focus on in the intelligent system in nature. So before we get to that, I'd like to show you what sound can do visually. Cymatics is the study of visible sound and vibration. It was discovered by Ernst Chladni, born 1756 and died in 1827, who was a German physicist and musician. He's sometimes called the father of acoustics. So what Chladni did, he got metallic plate and he put powder on it, and he bowed the side with a bow. And he saw that the powder started moving from the parts of the plate that are vibrating the most and accumulating in the parts that are vibrating the least. And it would give a specific image. Now we can do this with electronics, and it will give you such images. So this is the white, is the powder, and this is the metallic plate. It's circular here. And basically, each frequency has certain image, but it's not always constant. There are variables. The variables other than the frequency could be the room temperature, the humidity, the material that's on the plate, and so on and so forth. And this is here made, basically you have here is a container full of water. Sometimes it's mixed with alcohol or various other liquids. And there's, it's made of glass, and there's a light from underneath so that you can see the three-dimensional complexity and the camera on top. The next few images are taken from an amazing book by Alexander Lauterwasser. He's a photographer and a cymatics researcher. The book is called Water Sound Images. So that you see here that we're not just dealing with two-dimensional complexity, but three-dimensional, but in fact, it's beyond 3 dimensions, but we cannot witness what's beyond. This is hyperdimensional geometry. This is what's happening in your body when you're listening to music and sound. You know, we're made of 70 to 80% of water. So water is being affected all the time when you listen to music. It moves and it takes shape. And even the matter that's in our body is being affected by music. So, some other images. This reminds us a bit of mandalas, right? And of the sunflower. Here again. And he also correlated these cymatic patterns with patterns we find in nature. And another person, he's a good friend of mine, Gabrielle Kellerman, he's an amazing cymatics researcher in Romania. He's actually an art historian and an artist by training, and he dedicated his life to the study of cymatics. And his book is utterly amazing, where he shows you basically how everything in nature, including our body and body organs, they're all formed because of sound. You only need to understand the power of cymatics and how they manifest. So this is here what we have in the first row, the cymatic patterns, and then the second one, we have works of art from different ancient cultures in present times. And on the bottom, what you have is the DNA patterns. So there's something very serious there that we need to scrutinize further. I'm not saying this is a clear evidence that they're correlating, but these are enough of juicy signs for us to dig deeper into sound. Now, when you start to collect information like this as a, let's say you're a sound researcher and witness these anomalies, and that they appear in wide variety of different contexts and fields, and how people have used music in an intelligent way, you start to pay closer attention to it on a deeper and deeper level. That you need a lot of patience and hard work to really understand the complexity of what we're dealing with. So, intelligence in nature and in the universe, as I said earlier, has always been connected to numbers and to mathematical systems. But the ancients did not always think of that. They very often talked about a feminine energy. The Gnostics told us about Aeon Sophia, goddess wisdom. And goddess wisdom that we are part of is experiencing misguided and misdirected perception. That I have been interested in Gnosticism for quite a long time, and I bring into my research also influence from Gnosticism, but also Hermeticism, Neoplatonism, and Hermetic knowledge of ancient Egypt, and some esoteric philosophies and mystery pagan schools. So what I became interested in is, what is this Aeon Sophia that we always find a reference to the goddess in different cultures and countries? And the first scholar to have worked on this is Maria Gimbutas. I encourage you to look into her. Maria, M-A-R-I-J-A, Gimbutas, G-I-M-B-U-T-A-S. She collected a lot of knowledge and resources and material that showed that there is always a talk about a goddess in various cultures, and this goddess has been given various names. And as a matter of fact, this is on the rise now. We hear a lot people using the word Pachamama, especially those who are interested in shamanism from Central and South America. Gaia, the divine feminine, the goddess symbol. Inanna in Babylon, Shekinah with the Israelites, and many other names. So I became interested in this manifestation of this feminine energy and its connection to matriarchal societies. And Gimbutas also pointed that this was neutralized and taken out of the picture around the time when matriarchal societies became patriarchal societies, and chaos infested the world, and still is. So you see, the value of a multidisciplinary approach is when you start assuming that one has the interest in wide variety of different things, seemingly unrelated, is that you start little by little to connect the dots and to see the image. If you're so close, you can only see pixels. It only gets clearer when you go back. Kind of like Monet and Manet's paintings, pointillistic art. If you're very close, you just see beautiful clouds of dots. But when you go back, you see the image emerging. This is what connecting the dots is, then its value is that. But it's not an easy thing. And one should be immensely patient and not quickly rush into making a label, putting a label. Søren Kierkegaard, the 19th century philosopher, Danish philosopher, said a beautiful sentence: if you name me, you negate me. If you name me, you lock me into being, you create me, you make me exist, and by doing so, I can no longer be something else. you'll always refer to me as such. And that is a problem. It can be useful in specific cases, but in most cases it's dangerous. So it takes a lot of knowledge for us to understand things in the occult realm. The occult is not the hidden. The occult is something that's there, but you wouldn't see it, understand it, or experience it unless you have knowledge to understand it. The occult is not always evil. Some of the material in the occult is based on knowledge. Knowledge can be used for good or for evil. Any powerful tool can be used for both, depending on the intention. So I'm interested in this divine spark that has survived within us, that the Gnostics told us a lot about it. But not only that, the Gnostics and many different indigenous people, almost every indigenous group that you go to visit, if you're interested. I have been interested because that's part of my training as an ethnomusicologist. Ethnomusicology is kind of like anthropology of music. You need to have a background in anthropology to understand how to study music as a sociocultural phenomenon. So naturally we use fieldwork methods for various methods to collect data and analyze them and to understand what is happening. So what I became interested in is this power that sound has to awaken certain faculties within us, but also to do impossible things such as sound levitation or acoustic levitation and healing. I'll go over later on some of the medical research that's being done with sound, specifically ultrasound. But now we're capable of lifting objects. They're light so far, but we can lift them up in the air. So sound allows you to bypass gravity. And of course, most of you probably heard that the ancients knew about the power of sound and they lifted stone and this and that. Well, we're starting to prove it little by little that, yeah, this is something that's possible, but it takes tremendous amount of knowledge. So, also, if you travel in the world, you see a wide variety of different archaeological structures that were built by the ancient, painstakingly built. The House of Liani Hypogeum in Malta is a structure dug underground in the bedrock. And archaeologists estimate that it must have taken them about 20 years to dig it with basic tools, thousands of years ago. The most important thing is that in the oracle chamber, if you speak, the voice resonate on 110 hertz, which is a frequency that impacts the brain in a very unique way. Not only that, you'll be able to hear the sound in any chamber or room in the entire structure, in the hypogeum. Chavín de Huantar in Peru, northwestern Peru, is a huge structure. This is the plan that was built by the Chavín people. This is a pre-Incan civilization, and they're known to have had very sophisticated knowledge of sound. Use sound. They also use San Pedro cactus, Huachuma, which is a cactus that's mescaline based. It's a plant teacher. It's still being used in shamanism in Central and South America. And people in North America, in some Central American countries, they use its smaller cousin, the peyote, which is also mescaline based. This, so the way I did my fieldwork, I was interested in 3 different perspectives. The shamanic societal beliefs, how they use sound, and Eastern philosophies, understanding Buddhist chants and various chants and the mantra and sutra systems, and the Western scientific. So that's why I've been interested in sound and its connection to shamanism. This is a very rich and deep area that I can give an entire lecture on, but I'm not gonna go full deep into it. Just know that it's very rich and complex. How shamanic societies have used sound, which is not often given attention to in shamanic societies, more attention is given to the psychedelic substance, the plant teacher. So, but the Shavian did use that and use sound by itself as well. Use sound to channel water under ceremonial places to heighten the mood and cause a state of catharsis. Water rushing on underground tunnels with certain openings to let the sound come out, and this rumbling. So you see, that's what they were looking for, is altering consciousness with sound by itself, in most cases sound and psychedelics for shamanic societies. They use the conch shell among other instruments to blow the overtones. And in Peru, they use the Peruvian whistling vessels, where you basically blow air into this, and there's a little opening, gives you tiny hiss. One by itself is not effective, it just gives you one high frequency. It becomes more interesting if you have several of them, 5, 10 of them, and there's a minute difference between the frequency of one and all the others. When you listen to these various sounds played together with eyes closed, it'll alter your consciousness just purely from sound. So this is how the ancients used sound, and this is only one of the ways. I can give you dozens of examples of how the ancients used sound to alter consciousness. And there's still, actually, have survived many hundreds of these vessels, to my knowledge. I know a couple of collectors who have many of different whistling vessels, and there are makers nowadays making them as well. So human beings also made singing bowls, gongs, didgeridoos, discs and bells. All of these are various instruments that emitted harmonic overtones, and that's what I'll focus on later. These are all these frequencies that you heard in the gong. Without knowing anything about acoustics, which is a branch in physics that is concerned with the study of sound and vibration, humans everywhere have explored metallurgy, the combination of various metals, to create an instrument. And it's not easy to make a singing bowl and gong. It's incredibly difficult. To what? So that at the end, when you play it, you have an instrument that would allow you to hear what the resonance of that instrument is really about. I'm going to give you an example. This is a singing bowl. So I'm going to play it, and once again, pay attention to 3 variables: how high or low the frequency is. Second, how soft or loud, we call that amplitude. And the third one, the wobbling, the wavering, the beating of each harmonic. That's called modulation in physics. Each one showing up, wavering in different way by altering the soft and loud. It goes wow, 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 or wow, wow, wow. Most of the time, it has a tendency to go slower when you go lower in pitch. So this is how it sounds like. Now listen to the higher harmonics. I'm going to use the wooden side of the mallet. I'm sure you all felt the equanimity, the poise, slowing down, the attention, the presence because of the sound. It's very powerful. Just a few seconds and it can do that. That's what I've been interested in, this intelligence that we have within us, that intuition leads us to create instruments in various cultures. again, without knowing anything about physics and mathematics, to generate this harmonic series that was often called the living God. This is what the Logos is. This is what the Word is in the Gospel of John. In the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. By the way, John did not write that. It's been taken word to word from the pyramid text. Maybe John knew some people in the pyramid. So these are powerful phrases that you find them in many different religions, including in how God created the universe and the world, and so on. So why is it that we look for this harmonic series? What does it do to us? Why did the Aborigines use the didgeridoo, the bull roar, also harmonics? Harmonics are found everywhere, but when you can hear them to clearly audible level, it changes everything. And I'll talk later on more specifically of what they consist of. I just wanted to demonstrate these few things. So, sound is always used in Eastern philosophies, whether in mantra systems, sutra systems, in various forms of chants. Has also been used in Abrahamic religions or the Jehovah religions, the book religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. In a very smart way, if you really know how powerful Gregorian chants are, or Byzantine chants, the chants that you're likely to hear in a Greek Orthodox church, how these modes are complex and how much they deal with microtonality. The Byzantine octave is equal to 72 tones. I'll talk about this later. And the music in Quranic chants in Islam and music in Jewish ceremonies, it's incredibly complex. And sometimes even musicians don't fully understand the complexity. You need to know so much about microtonality, about non-Western musical cultures, to compare them and to understand why they sound different and what is the difference between them, how they impact the brain. So this is now where we're going toward, is the specifics of sound and how it impacts consciousness. And how sound has been used also in spiritual sects. For example, in Sufism, which is the mystical side of Islam, or mysticism in Islam. In Judaism, that would be Kabbalah. Christianity does not have a mystical branch by itself, like in Judaism in Islam, but there are a few writers who were considered to cover a lot on the spiritual side, the mystical side of Christianity. And also, of course, the use of sound in shamanism. So, sound is very important in mystical sects, and there are many, many different mystical sects and mystery schools. And they often address it as the creator, God. For example, in Sufism, when whirling dervishes whirl, and sometimes Sufism is practiced with just singing without needing to whirl. Just through listening, they go into an altered state of consciousness, which I'll address later. But the ultimate point of listening to sound, chanting, or just listening, and sometimes with physical movement, is to let go of the self, to go into euphoric state, a state of tarab in Arabic. Tarab, T-A-R-A-B, a state of enchantment, of euphoria, to merge with God, to go into a non-dual state where they lose the self. And they call that state al-fana. Al-fana is a state of total ego dissolution, which is similar to what Satori and Kensho are. So two terms used interchangeably to describe the state in Zen Buddhism, or the samadhi state in Hinduism. That state that we go to in meditation, especially when sound is involved, either through reciting a mantra or sutra, with eyes closed most likely, and focusing on the resonance. Now, I have to mention here that, yes, mantras are very popular these days, and that's great, but there's a very important part to that no one is addressing, which is the intonation of each note. And you know, words are formed by phonemes, and there are various vowels, and it's hitting the exact note. It's not just any note that's approximation. The intervals are what are the most important. The intervals have to be just, so that you have just intonation, so that you are singing with the right mathematics of sound. And that's something that I'll go deeper into later on. Just want you to be aware of this, since we're talking a bit about mantras. So with sound, you can alter reality and go into a non-dual state. There's a reason why Buddhist monks do throat singing and overtone singing. There are various ways of doing that. I'm going to demonstrate one way, not the Tibetan way. Here's one way, and basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to sing one note by itself first, and then sing it in a different way by manipulating the buccal cavity inside my mouth, by making it bigger and smaller, by shifting my tongue to open and close the space, so that you hear the overtones that are in my voice. And the reason why the overtones or harmonics exist in nature, so that they give us the tone color or the timbre. That's how basically our voices are different from each other, or the sound of piano is different from that same note played on a banjo, let's say. So sound has a color, and it's the overtone that color that sound. And this is where this complexity lays. So here's one note sung in a normal way, and then I sing it with overtones. When I sing it with overtone, you can hear, you're going to hear the fundamental frequency, the most pronounced part of the sound, being constant as a drone, and then you'll hear higher notes going higher and lower, just individual fainter notes. So one note by itself, sung in a normal way. Now that same note with overtone singing. These are the overtones that I found in my voice. Also, you find this in various places in the world. People doing overtone singing or diaphonic singing in a wide variety of different ways. The Buddhist monk way is more, and you can create a similar effect by opening, widening, and closing the throat area and the buccal cavity, and moving back or upward the soft palate and all of these things to create a resonant chamber, which is complex physics. This is called Helmholtz resonance in physics. Why? To bring out the infinity in the voice, the complexity, the whole in one, to alter your consciousness, everything on the mental, emotional, physical, spiritual levels. You snap back into grid. You tune the brain out of noise and you tap into signal. The harmonic series is pure signal. Harmonic series is meta-harmony. It's the place from where the word harmony comes from. When I play the bowl, it's hard sometimes to separate these harmonics. Why? Because they're found together in such a strong gravitational field. They get along so well. Why? Because what's connecting them together is mathematical ratios. That's why. So we addressed this, and now we're gonna delve deeper into the harmonic series. So basically what you're looking at on top is, pretend that this is one string that you're plucking, and it gives you the fundamental frequency. The fundamental frequency is the most pronounced part of the sound. Let's call it a C note. And then when you go to the second one from the top, there you have a division of 2 equal parts. This is where you get the first harmonic. If you're playing guitar or any string instrument, and you lightly touch the string with your finger, you're going to get a note that's an octave higher. An octave higher, for the non-musicians, is where the note doubles in its frequency. Do, 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 do. That's an octave higher. And it divides the string into 2 equal parts. The next one down, here we have a division of 3. And then you're going to have another harmonic, the second one in the series, which is a G. So first, fundamental frequency is C, and then an octave higher C, and then a G. So that's a 5th higher from the first harmonic, or an octave and a 5th higher from the C. The 5th is C to G, C, D, E, F, G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's why it is for non-musicians. And then if you divide the string into 4 equal parts, you get the next harmonic, another C, which is 2 octaves higher from the fundamental frequency. If you keep on dividing the string into 5 equal parts, 6 equal parts, 7 to infinity, you get a higher and higher harmonic. The most important thing is that these intervals start to shrink. They go smaller and smaller. The first one, the largest, is an octave higher. The second one is a 5th, and then a 4th, and then a major third, a minor third, and it goes on to infinity. So that's the basic thing that I want you to know about the harmonics. And we'll go little by little deeper into it. Now, if you remember, I said that sound is mathematical ratios. Music is the audible side of mathematics. Music is math that you're listening to. This is what harmony is. So, a 5th, the distance between C and G, is a 3 to 2 ratio, if you remember ratios from high school. 3 to 2 ratio. If you see the third one, the division of 3 and the division of 2, you see where you have 3 to 2. C to G, 3 to 2 ratio. 5th. And then if you take the third one from the top to the fourth one from the top, division of 3 with division of 4, these notes are G to C, and that's a fourth, G, A, B, C. And that would be a 4 to 3 ratio. And then the next one is a third, that's a 5 to 4 ratio, so on and so forth. So you see a bit how mathematical ratios relate to intervals. This is very, very important thing. Why? Because if you're playing scales, modes, if you're playing ragas, this is what Indian classical music is composed of, various scales. And these scales, you can also describe them as modes, have different spacing. However, they're not quantized as Western music is, and I'll talk about this quantization later. What you'll use there is various notes that when you have a musician, skilled musician, and Indian classical musician have a much more thorough training than Western musician. Often they start studying at age 5 or 7, and they go and they live with their guru. They practice 15, 17 hours every day for years. Because that musical culture is incredibly difficult to understand, incredibly complex. It functions in a very, very different way than Western music. I'm not saying Western music is not complex. It is complex in a different way, but we have driven this complexity in a different direction. And we created a different kind of harmony. And that's what you'll notice when you compare Western harmony or Western musical systems with non-Western musical systems. So a raga is a subset of different notes that create different intervals. And when you play them together, they create different moods. They impact people differently. Similarly with the Turkish and Arabic maqamat in Turkish and Arabic classical music, and the Persian scales. And basically everywhere outside of the Western world, you have this concept of scales, modes used to alter consciousness. But you need the receiver to encounter this music with the proper welcoming, with the proper ears, with judicious listening, with an understanding, letting their mind subside, letting their body vibrate sympathetically with sound, without any inhibition. And this is how an act of musical listening can alter your consciousness. That's, of course, a topic that I can talk about for many hours, but I want you to understand how valuable this is. Now, unfortunately, in the West, we lost the state of trance because of certain things that I'll address later. But I would like to demonstrate a bit this concept of an instrument or a scale or a group of notes that have various intervals can move emotions differently. So here I have two chimes, and these chimes have tines inside. The tine is a little metallic rod, a really tiny metallic rod, and they're of different lengths. The long ones are lower notes, and the smaller ones are higher notes. So there are different tines. Each one is tuned to a specific note. And between these notes, we have intervals. This is the space between the music, and this is where the mathematical ratio is. So when I play the chimes, there's a string, and on the bottom there's a plastic disc that would swing around and hit these tines, creating sound. So I'd like you to listen to the sound of this instrument. And as you're listening, you're welcome to listen with the eye closed so that you focus on the emotional state. I'd like you to think of some words or adjectives that you may use to describe how you are being moved by the sound. Okay? Most people will describe it as feeling lighthearted. There's a sense of opening and curiosity. There's a childlike curiosity in it. There's a mystical sense. It's happy. It's delightful. It's joyous. It's welcoming, and so on and so forth. And the second one has different notes, therefore different intervals, therefore different mathematical ratios. But it's going to impact you in a different way. Once again, please close your eyes. This one has more of a sense of lament, a sense of nostalgia, a sense of yearning, of going inwards. There's a gentle, healing sadness that brings relief. There's introspection, going back to the past or reviewing the past, healing in some way. So here's a little example of how different notes with different intervals that create different mathematical ratios can create different emotions. Yes, mathematics can create different emotions. God knows they create the universe, let alone emotions. So I want to share with you something a little deeper based on what we were talking about here. Something that Plato, Aristotle, and Pythagoras and many of the ancients were really interested in: sound and its connection to consciousness. What we are dealing with here is, this is the logos, the sound. The logos has a potential. Because of these intervals, it creates an ethos. Ethos is a word that's still in use in English, which can be best described as the spirit, the describing character, the emotional state, the qualifying, distinguishing character, and so on. And what you feel inside of you is pathos. So logos, ethos, and pathos. This is how we can seriously study music as it relates to the observer, the phenomenological aspect of the experience. And these are very big concepts that we don't have the time to fully explore them again. The beautiful thing about all these things, they're enriching and they're revealing, but given the time limitation, unfortunately, we cannot go to the deserved depths, but I hope that you will get to explore them at some point. I have a lot of information about all this stuff on my website, soundmeditation.com, that you're welcome to check out, or other sources as well. But I want you to understand the complexity of music and how philosophical it can get, really. That it's not just about philosophy and it's not about intellectual stuff. No. What I'm aiming for here is a deeper understanding of these things to have a deeper direct experience. And that's what the ancients were into, that we have lost that, really. And now we have a wide variety of different beautiful musical styles. Some are more worthy than another. But pop music is music that's composed without great depth for people most likely without great knowledge of music to be able to listen to it, buy it, understand it, and enjoy it. But there is a limitation to it as well. In the same sense, for you to understand jazz, you need to know a lot about the inner structure of jazz. You may love it and appreciate it without knowing anything about it, but for you to really benefit so much from what jazz can offer you, you need to know some things about improvisation, jazz extended harmony, syncopation, blues scales, the various roles of the instruments that they tend to have, horn instruments and rhythm section instruments, so on and so forth. Similarly to other musical styles, classical music or some other progressive rock, for example, art rock. But that's the case, that's almost always the case when you deal with classical musical styles of different cultures, especially music that use the modal system, the maqam system. They came out of Mesopotamia. This is why you find these musical cultures around that area, so Turkish, Arabic, and Persian musical styles, and they have influenced a lot Indian classical music. Indian classical music, Armenian music, Central Asian music, I can name many dozens of different musical styles, the cultures that use the same system. So this is something that is very misunderstood, and some people don't know it exists altogether. But when you start to study it, you realize that this is technology. It's not just an art form. Technology, even an auditory medical system, a system for mind, body, heart maintenance, ego maintenance, a healing system, all together encompassed in something that may be considered art. But it's not just art. It's a medium that allows you to experience the place where art, philosophy, and spirituality intersect. It makes you think, makes you wonder. You learn more about who you are. And it's something that takes you into euphoric state, into a state of ecstasy, of enchantment. What is the basis? The harmonic series and this intelligence that's within it. And it gets more complex. We talked about mathematical ratios. I want you to look at, see, I'm going to explain a little bit here. It's okay if you can't read music, you have the letters written by the notes. So this is the harmonic series. The first one on the left is the fundamental frequency C. And what you have above it is the 20 partials, the harmonics that are on above the harmonic series. And the spacing, the intervals would remain the same whether you're starting on fundamental C, C sharp, D, or any other note, and the complexity will always be the same. So notice the complexity on top further, the fluctuating integer numbers, +2, -14, +2, -31. This is the tuning of the harmonics when you compare them to equal tempered scale or equal tempered octave that I'm going to talk about later. The equal temperament is the quantization of the interval. So in the Western octave we have 12 tones. Often they're called 12 half steps. They're not always, octaves are not always divided into 12 tones. In the Indian octave is 22 tones. The Arabic and the Persian is 24 tones. The Turkish octave is 53 tones. The Byzantine octave is 72 tones. What you have there is smaller and smaller intervals and smaller complexities. Why? Because these complex intonations stem from the tuning of the harmonic series. These fluctuating integer numbers that you have is how much these notes fluctuate by the amount of cents. A cent is a unit used for logarithmic measurement. A half step, the distance between C and C sharp and D, or the distance between the white key on the piano and the adjacent black key, is 100 cents. This is after the equal temperament. The equal temperament divided the octave, which is equal to 1200 cents according to acousticians, into 12 equidistant half steps. So things snap back into grid. You have 100 cents everywhere. Before the equal temperament, some of these half steps may be equal to 100 cents, some may be equal to 98 cents, some equal to 103, 106, depending on the context and which one. But for sure, they're not all equidistant. What we did, because of the equal temperament, which gave us some advantages, the main one is to be able to, let's say, tune a piano to one tuning and be able to transpose a piece of music from one key to any other key without the piece of music going out of tune. If you're playing on a piano that's tuned to non-equal temperament, you are limited with the transposition. What is transposition? It's when you move, let's say, a song from a tonal center to a higher tonal center or lower tonal center, so that the singer with a higher voice can sing it more easily, or a lower voice can sing it more easily if you were to transpose it to a lower tone, or to facilitate playing. That's basically what transposition is. So you're limited with a non-equal tempered tuning. Equal temperament allowed us to play in all keys, but it came at a cost. What is the cost? The cost is we're no longer following the mathematics of nature. We no longer vibrate sympathetically with sound, with music played on just intonation that follows the complexity of nature. So that G, the third one from the left, is +2 cents. If you were to play that G on an equal tempered piano and use sophisticated equipment to measure it, you'll have a G without the +2 cents. If you were to play in just intonation, it would be 2 cents higher. Some people will think about, oh, what's 2 cents if a whole half step is 100 cents? It's too little. True. Most people won't hear it. Even some musicians on there, unless they have very, very scrutinizing ear, they would hear the difference. But what happens is that your entire body senses it. Your neurons feel it. Everything in your body. But the most important thing is that there is no trance. There's no euphoria. There's no ecstasy. Your consciousness is not going to be altered. You would enjoy the music, but you're not going to go somewhere with it. So music in the West nowadays, as great as it sounds and beautiful, it's castrated. It's quantized. And that's something that we've been doing left and right in nature, or with systems that come out of nature. This is almost like thinking of GMO of sound. You alter things, right? You just change things based on practicality. Oh, we don't want diseases. We don't want, this and that, imperfections. Let's just embellish that. That's sheer ignorance that is leading us to very awkward levels and dangerous levels if you pursue this tendency, this ignorance where it's taking us, this misguided perception. that consciousness is experiencing now. We are separating ourselves from the system that we come from nature that we're part of. As intelligent as it is, it doesn't matter really. We are embellishing it. We are ameliorating it as if we don't know enough. So that's why non-Western musical cultures did not adapt the equal temperate system, because you lose the most important thing. Why you want to do that? Right? Anything that has frets or keys, that's equal temperament. If you're playing piano, harpsichord, organ, guitars, bass guitars with frets, divisions, that means play this note or that note, nothing in between. Marimba, vibraphone, not brass and wind instruments. Why? Because we intuitively overblow a little bit or underblow to look for the right intonation, especially if we are very skilled as a musician, looking for the proper intonation. And musicians automatically play in non-equal temperament, even if they've been trained all their life in the conservatory system or university system, which teaches the equal temperament, they still resort to a non-equal temperament. Singers, wind players, wind instruments, people who play wind instruments, I should say, or brass players, you can also say that. And the only time we don't do that is when we don't have the choice. On string instruments, violins, violas, cellos, and basses, you can play in between. This is where the magic is. This is what the Shruti concept is in Indian classical music. It's the note between the note. That's what's important. That's why in a lot of these musical cultures, you have the slides that would go between the notes, the ornamentation. It's drawing your attention to that magic. The swaras are the notes, but the magic is in the shrutis. So the shrutis is what you have on top. So you see the 11th one, the 11th partial, the G flat, minus 49 cents. That's almost half. This is where you get the quarter tone in certain musical cultures in West Asia, Turkish, Arabic, and Persian. Anthony Holland, with his research on the power of harmonics and how this specific interval can cause cancer cells to self-destruct if you expose them to that interval, leaving intact the healthy cells. He's building on the research that Rife did. And Anthony Holland gave beautiful TED talk. I encourage you to look it up. So what does that do? This system can allow you to neutralize, to annihilate an anomaly, a virus, a cancer cell that should not be part of nature. I can give you many examples like that of what they do to the microtubules and consciousness as a whole. So there's so much complexity. Unfortunately, I don't have the time to go into great depth, but just know that it's an incredibly deep subject. The Harmonic Series has often been described as the living God. This is what Kabbalah is about. This is the ancient study of quantum physics that we are rediscovering. It's the theory of everything that we've been looking for to allow us to understand what quantum physics is about, coming from theory of relativity. Because so far, quantum physics is incomprehensible. Nobody knows what's happening, especially quantum physicists. The more you know about quantum physics, the more you know this can't be. Clearly, there's another side to reality that we cannot fathom, can't understand. And then you have string theory. It's about harmonics as well. So I'm not going to go deeper into this because this will take time, but it's very, very serious topic. I want you now to listen to it, and you're going to see a circle going around the notes, and you're going to hear the fundamental frequency and these partials. It's going to go up to the 16th partial and not to the 20th. So listen attentively and listen to these notes that fluctuate with these fluctuation of sense. The 7th one, by the way, this is where the blue note comes from. Blue note is a note played flat on purpose. Why do you want to do that? You can't play it on any note. Because we have the system embedded in us. It's encoded in us. This is what we use to create music. All harmonic systems, all songs, all musical pieces, all scales, all modes come from this. This is the source of everything. There are many, many books out there. On my website, I have a huge list of recommended books. Please inform yourself about this. This is a very serious thing if you're interested in sound and its impact on consciousness and spirituality. Here we go. So, I'm going to show you now some harmonic spectrum analysis so that you see what they look like. It's very important now to understand them on a deeper level, and thanks to technology, with certain software, we can see what they look like. We can hear them individually. We can move them around. We can hear them in clusters and combinations. What I'm going to show you is how the harmonic spectrum of this specific singing bowl looks like, and you're going to hear the harmonics on their own. First, you'll hear all of them sounding together. Here we have two bands, the upper and the lower, that's left and right. Here we have two channels, but they're basically the same thing. So in each subset, you have a group of lines going from the bottom to the top. The bottom one is thick, that means it's going to be louder. And if it's lower, that means lower in frequency. So you will hear first all of the harmonics sounding together the way you would hear the singing bowl. And then you will see a cursor focused on just one by itself. You'll hear one harmonic. You're going to hear the pixels, the auditory pixels of the sound of this bowl. Keep in mind that most of the time we don't hear the harmonics. We hear only the fundamental frequency. Like if you're hearing a note on a guitar, or a note on a piano, or a note that's sung, you hear only that fundamental frequency, and it's overshadowing the notes that constitute the tone color, and these are the harmonics, these finer frequencies. What we look for every time we try to use sound as a form of therapy are instruments that are called overtone emitting instruments, where you audibly hear these notes, and that changes everything. These are singing bowls, gongs, didgeridoos, and discs and bells, and so on, or overtone singing. So here you're going to hear all of these frequencies individually, one by one, and then at the end you'll hear all of them played together. We need a higher volume on this, so this is going to be, can you raise it from here? There we go. Maybe there are other harmonics that the sophisticated microphone and the software couldn't decode, but that's what sound looks like. Fascinating, huh? To be able to have a deep understanding of what sound consists of, and to understand the system. This is what a Shruti box note looks like. It's one note, the C note. The Shruti box is a handheld instrument where you bellow air into it and it vibrates reed. It has a sound similar to the sound of a harmonium, or like a larger, lower harmonica. And you can open specific notes and vibrate. So one note has all of these harmonics, and it sounds like this. I didn't go into all of them, it takes time. And this is what sound of a gong looks like. Actually, very similar gong to the one behind me, except it's mine. There's slight differences between gongs, even though they're the same make and same diameter. And listen to this one. So you see how they're packed here. It's so dense. There are hundreds and hundreds of harmonics. You can zoom in with this program and isolate them and hear one at a time. It's the universe. It's utterly amazing. the complexity of sound of a gong or other instruments as well. This is sound of a flute that comes from the Secoya people from Ecuador that's used in ayahuasca ceremonies. And look at how many harmonics it has. This has no recording. Huh? Didgeridoo with little pauses in between. Native American flute, American Indian flute. So we talked about the esoteric side of sound. I want to go a little deeper into it, that this is something that Pythagoras brought into Europe. Pythagoras, the father of geometry, was also interested in sound and its impact on consciousness. He traveled to ancient Egypt and studied the Hermetic schools and studied other mystery schools and brought this knowledge. And his knowledge was not part of the public domain. It was only among the luminaries and the initiated. Socrates and Plato, among many others, were into this knowledge. Socrates was sowing impiety in the minds of his young students and others and telling them about powerful secrets. The authorities didn't like that. They threw him in jail, and eventually he was forced to drink poison and commit suicide. His student, Plato, did not do this. He actually encoded all of his writing with knowledge about sound to an extent where you would not notice this if you don't know many things about music, music theory, ancient Greek music, and mathematics. Why? Because it's in an occult form. But even if you take just the philosophical aspect, it's astounding, and still to this day we can't understand these surviving 2,000 pages of Plato's work. This is one of several books on the musical structures in Plato's dialogues. That now we're starting to realize that Plato's work is about sound and consciousness, not just philosophy. Why? Why the ancients were into sound? This is what we need to understand, because it has the secret of the universe. There's a reason why at the core level of all philosophies and religions, even in science, the Big Bang, the word, the logos, music of the spheres, the primordial Om that started the universe, Spanda, movement, Nakasha, all of these things are references to the same complex thing that is so unfathomable. So we addressed this aspect. Equal temperament, also we addressed it, so not enough. I want to show you a little bit the difference. Don't scrutinize this too much, you're going to get dizzy and you're not going to feel well. Just want to show you a bit the difference between the harmonic series frequency ratios and the equal temperate ratios. So the harmonic series are the one in the blue, and the other one are in red, and the approximate difference is what's in the black in the middle. So it's not a lot, but it's enough to nod you off, to not allow you to fully benefit from what sound can do to your consciousness, to your awareness. And this is the beginning of where this complexity starts. If you're interested in this complexity, if you're a mathematician, get ready, you're gonna be surprised. There are many books on this subject. One of them is Museumatics, if you're interested in this. So, this is a beautiful book on how equal temperament affected us. It's called How Equal Temperament Ruined Harmony and Why You Should Care, very simply. So now we're going to go into brainwave cycles to show you what the brain goes through when we're listening to overtone emitting instruments. So the brain has 5 cycles. Think of them as the 5 gears. The delta state is a state of sleep where the brain is working from 0.1 to 4 hertz. Theta state is an introspective state of meditation, where the brain is running on electricity somewhere between 4 and 8 hertz or frequencies. Alpha is 8 to 13, state of being awake but relaxed. Beta, this is a very taxing state. 12 to 30 hertz, state of concentration. Gamma state, the state that we learned about only in the last 10 years. 30 to 100 hertz, sometimes beyond 100 hertz. Hyperbrain activity, a state of learning and creating. So And we're always switching between these different states. If you are in the beta state, you're likely to experience fatigue. You need to get the brain into a state of rest. And that's why meditation is very important to every person, because you are not running the brain. And keep in mind that the brain, the entire body for that matter, runs on electricity and on chemicals. And this is what constitutes the different altered states or non-ordinary states of consciousness, to use Stan Grof's wonderful term, and just, or normal states. We literally run on chemicals and electricity, and that's why we need food. And everything that we ingest, drink, is going to alter our consciousness. Why? Because it's about molecules. When consciousness is altered, it's altered in a specific way. You have molecules, whether endogenous or exogenous. Endogenous, that means they are created in the body. And we run on chemicals. They fall under 3 different umbrellas: neurotransmitters, enzymes and hormones, or exogenous chemicals, anything that you ingest. At the end, you get a molecule that goes into receptors that alters consciousness, and you switch channels. This is how we experience different spirits. Okay? They're not spirits outside of us. And I'm not saying spirits outside of us don't exist. Probably they do. It's hard to quantify that. But what I'm more concerned about is how consciousness is altered, how consciousness switches, almost like switching channels. And this is what my subject's baseline mind looks like. What you see on the left is the left hemisphere and right hemisphere. The activity starts in the front, and it goes deep. That's about an interval of 6 or 7 seconds. The blue is no electrical activity, and then you have green, yellow, red, yellow, and white, sharp peaks. These are all thoughts and micro thoughts. Even though my subject is lying down wearing a mask, not listening to anything, or probably eyes closed, you would think that she's in a state of rest. Nope. The mind is doing business as usual, being the monkey that it always is. So I played a large gong to loud dynamics for a couple of minutes, and this happens. All the activity flattened. Now, to a neuroscientist, the person is asleep. Nope, she's not asleep. She's just paying attention. She's present. She's here now and listening. That's the power of harmonics. And the next slides, this is open fifth, 2 tuning forks, C and G, that's the fifth. And they also have harmonics. It's not just a mathematical ratio. Here we have small Vietnamese gong. Small Japanese bell played to high amplitude. High amplitude is louder dynamics. And notice the difference with, let's go to this one. Low amplitude. And the low amplitude is causing this eruption. This is not discursive thinking. This is the limbic system being activated. Notice that they're not sharp peaks. They're undulating, and they're on the lower end of both hemispheres, the left and the right. The limbic system is responsible for emotions. The brain is made of 3 concentric layers. The core one is the reptilian brain. The reptilian brain is responsible for running the machinery, your autonomic nervous system, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. Non-discerning action, things that you don't have to have the attention for it to function. Your brain, your reptilian brain runs the machinery, whether you're asleep, in meditating, concentrating on something, passed out, it's always running the machinery. Your heartbeat, digestion, all of these things. The next layer is the limbic system, which is responsible for emotion. And the outer layer, the thickest layer, the layer that formed last, is the neocortex, the thinking brain. Yeah? So the other slide that it was before, this is what frame drum can cause the brain to experience. What's valuable here is the synchrony between both. There's coherence. So there is this low level of mental activities, but it's contained, it's lower. But what's important here is that they're communicating with each other, there's coherence. And keep in mind that there isn't just the rhythmic aspect of the frame drum, but there's also the overtones, because all membranes, whether they're animal hide, skin, or synthetic, can create overtones as well. Okay? So this is what a chacapa on the body. This is an instrument made of dried bunch of leaves, and that's used in ayahuasca shamanism and from the Amazon basin. They usually use it as an instrument to create a sound or to tap it on their hand or body to create a rhythmic aspect. Also can create eruption in the limbic system, and orange blossom water or neroli water, and Palo Santo going off the charts. So this is what Palo Santo has a spirit would look like. The spirit is how you feel. When you smell Palo Santo and you experience this sense of harmony, by the way, all olfactory stimuli are another form of harmony. Yeah? Smells are made of notes and chords. When you hear noses, those who design perfumes talk about smells, they talk about notes, the complexity of the note, and the upper note and the lower note, and the cluster of notes and harmonies. So if you drink good coffee, good tasting coffee, or tea, or tequila, or wine, or mezcal, or whatever, you smell a good perfume or nice olfactory sense, Palo Santo, sage, and copal, you are experiencing an inner harmony. Your brain is decoding all of that. They act just like harmonics. And they have a very important role in shamanism, all shamanism. Except shamans did not know how to address it. Given that they come from shamanic societies, they tell you spirits. It's the spirit of the plant, the spirit of this, spirit of that. It's true, everything is alive. Everything is part of the Buddhist mind. You are creating everything. We are all creating everything. It's all part of the Buddhist mind. That is you. You are the creator, you are the art, you're creating, and you are the one experiencing the art. In Hinduism, you have Vishnu lying down in the oceanic space, and the flower of lotus comes out of his navel and creates a universe. And Brahma opens his eyes and the word comes to be. The Brahma closes his eyes and the word disappears. It's all about you, your experience, how you view the experience, how you're experiencing. This is the phenomenological aspect that we need to address. We cannot afford so much to keep on looking outside and think that we're spiritual and we talk about disembodied souls outside of us and ignore going inward. All serious work promotes going inward, whether you're into G.I. Gurdjieff, Uspensky, Madame Blavatsky, Rudolf Steiner, Krishnamurti, anyone, everyone. This is what shamanism is really about. Except they were not wrong, they were right based on how little they knew. They knew a lot about certain things, but not a lot about strange nature of reality. Neuroscience, biochemistry, physics and mathematics and sound and complex things that we need all of the specialists in the world to sit and discuss at this point. Really, that's what we want, to understand what consciousness is and not to just be pacified with stories. Why? Because of what we don't know. If you dig deep enough, you realize that anthropology has been weaponized. Sociology, psychology, religions have been weaponized, used against people. Your own tendency is being used against you. There's a beautiful book called Weaponizing Anthropology by David Price, and he talks about, actually includes in it, letters that Gregory Bateson wrote. Gregory Bateson was an anthropologist, and he was the husband of the famous Margaret Mead, prominent, one of the earliest anthropologists and student of Franz Boas, the person who brought anthropology into the States from Germany. He wrote on how the Soviet Union promoted people to embrace the past as a way to dumb populations down. So archaic revival is important, but it has to be done in a new way, through a new lens, to be scrutinized, to be understood with our contemporary tools and subjects and interests, and not to let go of all of that and focus on it. Why? Because all of these things that come to us from the past, including religions, including practices and ceremonies, are for people from the past. And people and their consciousness grow. Consciousness, even 20 years ago, was different than now. How does it grow? Through knowledge, not just information. Information, when it's fathomed and fermented and it's used, it can create knowledge. With long-term practice and you tapping into insights and really understanding knowledge and its power, then you create wisdom. So I want to bring awareness to the renewed treatment that we should take in addressing how to understand these shamanic models. That's why these shamanic models disagree with each other and they differ. They're not always the same. You're going to go crazy if you try to figure out who's more right, who's the best shamanic model, even within the Amazon basin, where there's about 80 tribes that uses ayahuasca. Who is it? The Shipibo, the Ashaninka, the Shuar, or the others? The Shipibo seems to be the most prominent because of certain early documentaries covering, ayahuasca shamanism, blah, blah, blah. So now they're more prominent. It doesn't mean that they're the only best ones. But if you compare them, you realize that they're different. Everything is different about them. The cosmology of spirits, the way of making the brew, the etiquette of the experience, the ikaros, the diet, and so on and so forth. And let alone comparing a shamanic model from one culture where they use one sacrament to another one that uses different sacrament. Say, for example, Hopi Indian that uses peyote and the Shipibo that uses ayahuasca. You cannot do that because they're completely different stories. We shouldn't get stuck in its story. We should not retell these things, go native and talk about these things as this is the truth for us right now. This is the truth for them. We are not them. We experience completely different realities. Similarly to ancient religions. Ancient religions are for people who lived a different time. They lived through different zeitgeists. I cannot tell you the importance of doing this. Anthropologists, ethnomusicologists, sociologists who work with people know the value of not taking something out of context, of understanding it in context so that you understand what it's about. If you take it out of context, you're going to have a different story. If that's what you want to do, just be with the story, that's fine. Just know that the story is not the truth. The story should be focused on how is it changing you? What do you think? Now that you had this experience, what do you think about yourself, consciousness, and the world? Let's focus on that. And it's very hard to talk about the experience of what happens. So, sound affects the autonomic nervous system. This is the on and off. The parasympathetic would do something, the other one does something. Parasympathetic constricts pupil, sympathetic dilates pupil. One stimulates saliva production, the other one inhibits, so on and so forth. Also affects the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve, the vagrant nerve. Vagus in Latin means vagrant. Starts at the brain stem and goes everywhere in the body. It changes your heart rate variability. What's important in the heart rate is not just how many beats per minute, is the minute fluctuation between one beat and another, as well as the accent. This is something that we became aware of only in the last 8-9 years. Very, very important thing. It revolutionized neuroscience, that we now know that the heart is the boss. The heart influences the brain more than the brain can influence the heart. Your brain adjusts itself based on how the heart is feeling, what kind of emotional state, and it secretes all of the chemicals based on how the heart is feeling. Music impacts that. That's why you are propelled subconsciously, intuitively to listen to music after a hard day. right? To snap out of the baseline, to just change everything. And there are so many things that change. And the heart, complexity. There are many different beats that are happening inside the heart based on which area of the heart you're looking at. This is a very complex image. What it's dealing with is the attack, the release, the sustain, the decay. These are things that audio engineers and sometimes musicians, but mostly audio engineers and acousticians know about, and how sound is produced. The attack is when you hit something and you create the sound, the sustain, and then the decay, and how the note fizzles out and diminishes. So there's so much complexity on the sound level in our body that is impossible for us with our technology to understand. And the heart and the autonomic nervous system create such sophisticated machinery. And guess what? Sound impacts that. And that's part of the obsession that we have with music. And the versatility that we have for music to allow us to experience God. Book religions use the same things that shamans use. When you go into a church, especially Greek Orthodox Church, for example, where there's profuse ornamentation, iconography, and a long ceremony that exposes you to mind-altering Byzantine chants and a lot of incense. And the bell ringing. What's a bell? It's a gigantic singing bowl, a lot of overtones. So it's altering your consciousness to make you feel God, to make you feel a oneness, to make you feel an altered state. All religions use this. And if you take it out of context without the sacred stuff and the religious stuff, you get the same results. Even if you're in a secular environment or in an indigenous shamanic setting, you get the same result. So, highly encourage you to look into Rupert Sheldrake's morphogenetic resonance. He, after many years of doing thorough research, beautiful research that keeps on growing, talks about the morphogenetic field, that every species has a morphogenetic field that we download information from. We connect, we upload even, every species. This is what's been called the Akashic field or records, where there's a database of human experience where we can tap into. This is what allows certain people, or even rats and various animals, to learn something. This is what the 100 monkey experiment is about. You teach 100 monkeys something, and then other monkeys start to learn the same thing, found in other places. So there's some sort of invisible trading of information, downloading. This is another beautiful book on the nature of consciousness, that universe is a product, and reality is a product of our consciousness and not the other way around, by Robert Lanza. Reality is biocentric. Reality is a product of our consciousness and not the other way around. These are some of the current changes that are happening in science. So science created something that became known as the scientific model, which has many holes. And what do? We hang pictures on these holes because it's incomplete. We now have scientists, unfortunately, they're being excommunicated and laughed at for coming up with powerful, meaningful, empowering systems that show us the intelligence that we live in, the power of consciousness, that we are not disconnected from the outer reality. Inner world is the same as the outer world. This is what the acronym that you hear quite often, as above, so below, as within, so without, is about. This is what we're talking about. There is no outer reality. When you dream, that dream is in your head, that reality is in your head. This reality seems to be functioning in the same way. I know it's hard to comprehend that, but this is where some of the leading scientists are starting to think that the mind is the reality, the brain is the transducer of consciousness. We tap into consciousness like a field, like a frequency. The same way that a receiver, a radio, a TV taps into all these frequencies, and you have sound, you have audio, visual. These people are not inside of these machines, they're outside, but you are tapping into this information in form of invisible frequency, the brain does the same thing. And when we alter consciousness, we tap into different ways of experiencing reality. So I created a model based on a lot of the things I researched to test these things. And in this model that I call sound meditation, which is based on holistic practice that combines shamanic ceremonial setting with an Eastern emphasis on breathing exercise and visualization, I use different tools mixed together. The mindset, which is your intentions, attention, will, observation, and awareness or self-awareness. All of these things that happen inside of you as an observer. This is why paying attention is the most important thing. It's not the treatment that you're receiving, the subject that you're dealing with, the tool. It's your reaction to that, is what you think about it. The setting, the modifiable setting, control setting, noise, temperature, light, meditation, contemplation, mindfulness being exercised. And they're different from each other. Breathing exercises, using olfactory stimuli to subject the body to the new harmony. And that's my understanding of shamanic ceremony, having done a lot of field work in many different shamanic models, to really be in the experience and take the medicine, listen to sound, and to scrutinize what's happening in dozens, in few hundred experiences. To understand what is this nature of healing, how is it working, what's a better way to understand it as a Westerner. Is it good enough to take just what the shamans tell me, or there's another way for us as a Westerner, as Westerners to understand it? What's a more just way, healthier way, without carrying the same system? True, we are grateful to indigenous people that have kept these practices alive, even though they were persecuted, and especially in doing these specific ceremonies and using psychedelics, drugs, good drugs. Why humans are always obsessed with taking them? That all shamanic models in the world are built on taking a sacrament, and that sacrament is almost always a mind-altering substance that are demonized now, and using sound. What is really happening? Why are there all of these olfactory stimuli? What is it about? It's about showing you the way, showing you how you align with the cosmos, with the universe, where pure signal is, where God is within you. Letting go of the noise of your conditioned mind, feeling, exercising this encounter, paying attention to how your experience is being enriched by olfactory stimuli that are making you feel grounded, safe, inspired, elated, that give you courage, allow you to navigate further, to have more stamina for your psychonautic skills, being astronaut in psyche if you're on that sacrament or another, or even in just meditation, just with sound. Sound by itself is the most sophisticated mind-altering substance that's, and that too is altered in the West and castrated and diminished. Now, of course, the listeners would not know this because we don't know what we don't know. Someone listening to, let's say, I don't want to name names, but I'm going to name it now. Let's say Britney Spears. I'm not putting Britney Spears down, but there's better music than Britney Spears. Without knowing something other than Britney Spears existing, the person would think that this is the best thing in the world. I call that the Twinkie effect. If you don't know that there are various amazing desserts exist in the world and you eat a Twinkie, you may think that this is the most amazing thing in the world until you taste, let's say, just a halfway decent dessert, let alone a very good dessert. And when you know how much this Twinkie is damaging your body and why it tastes good, then knowledge becomes empowering. Then you know the difference. So we don't know what we don't know. And learning about music is about learning how to appreciate and understand a different musical style that you did not understand. And your older sibling or your cousin or your friend or your neighbor gets you to listen to this band or that artist, and all of a sudden, wow, you discover a new word. Well, guess what? This is an endless journey. It's an endless journey that you are creating a deeper enjoyment, but not only that, and that's what most people don't know, you are benefiting on all levels, the emotional, intellectual, physical, and spiritual level, with how you improve your musical taste and go into more and more sophisticated musical styles, traditions. I'm not gonna name names, I'm not gonna give examples, I'm not gonna take any questions about this, I don't wanna offend anyone, because we have a tendency to become so attached to what we love and what we've been listening to, not knowing how much we could love something else when we grow to it. But taste is always connected to knowledge, to your experience, your understanding. And I'm going to stop here because this is something that can go a lot deeper, because I want you to keep on discovering new music and to realize why is it moving you and how can you improve this more, and what is it that you need to know, what is your duty as a judicious listener in listening actively, intentionally. The other things that I use: visualization, guided visualizations, guided and directed perceptions, toning and vocalization, working with overtone emitting instruments, judicious and equanimous listening. And well, the phenomenological aspects, something we addressed, that we cannot address enough. So there are various techniques here to keep your awareness on the sound. And that's something I communicate with people in the beginning of the experience. Judiciously listen to the overtones, become aware of the space between the overtones, explore the different register of these overtones, observe the varying modulation, this is the beating that I was saying about. Listen to the sustain of the overtones and observe their decay in various points, so on and so forth. Because it's the listening that's going to take you to the altered state, or to a state of complete annihilation of the self, where you go into what's called the hypnagogic state, a state where your brain is awake and your body is asleep. You lose awareness of who you are and where you are and what's been happening. We all go through that state when we're falling asleep, but it's usually so quick and transitory that you don't always remember it. Sometimes we remember the next day. It's that state where your mind is experiencing no thought, and then quickly you go into the sleep state, where you have the 5 cycles, the last one being the REM state, the REM, the rapid eye movement. This is where dreams happen. What is that dream? It's in your head. It seems to be this is where everything is. So, there are many benefits to the sound meditation. I've been collecting a lot of data and using scientific studies to understand what it does. Quieting the mind, enabling participants to disengage their undesirable habitual patterns, emotional, energetic, intellectual, and physical, to empower positive cognitive change, quieting antidepressants and managing depression, considerable diminishing of anxiety and panic attacks, to access and release traumas, to bring the self into a state of inner peace and calmness, to establish a state of resonance and attunement with the self, enhancing one's state of presence and self-awareness, so on and so forth. So music is intricately connected to emotion. What it does is it revitalizes our emotional state. It awakens it, and especially in a shamanic ceremony. Sound pieces allow you to go far deeper into, let's say, gratitude, into love, into compassion, into forgiveness and empathy. There's a reason why in Buddhism, loving kindness, compassion, empathy, these beautiful qualities are often talked about. When you talk a lot about them, you are creating that reality. You're forging that reality into being. You are contemplating on them, you're talking about them, you're meditating on them. the part of the repertoire of who you are. What you speak of, what you think of, what you feel, what you exercise. By doing that, you create that reality. You see this very strange and incomprehensible level of understanding reality that we are dealing with right now. How amazing it is. But there are a lot of pitfalls and problems involved in doing spiritual work, doing the work, as Gurdjieff called it. Ego inflation is a major one. And many people, unfortunately, are experiencing this. So it's very important to bring awareness to this without any judgment. We need to understand the human condition and to exercise more understanding, love, and compassion, and to be willing to direct people, especially those who know more. And there are many different ways of doing it. For example, J.P. Sears, whose videos are about spiritual bypassing and also spiritual materialism, he pokes fun at people who do these things. That's his way of doing it, and I like it. It's funny. It's hilarious. So we need to find creative ways to wake up people, because sometimes when people know very little, they can sleepwalk and think they're awake. We need to bring guidance. This is ourselves included, to realize that there are pitfalls and how they manifest and why they manifest, as a way to understand the human condition. Spiritual materialism, spiritual bypassing, messianic visions, right away starting to have big ideas and intentions to want to heal the world and end all wars and feed the poor, when the person has not finished yet healing him or herself. And there are a lot of healers who call themselves healers without having finished or started working, healing themselves. How could that be? Pathological altruism, spiritual narcissism or narcissistic spiritualities. These are things that occur. And another thing, what I call monobibliosis, which is the disease of becoming an expert after having read one book or after having had one experience. This is also quite rampant these days. So why am I addressing these things? Because of this awareness that we need to bring to this misguided perception that we have gone through, and we are going through, and consciousness is going through. And this is what the Gnostics, but also other indigenous people told us, that consciousness has been experiencing a virus, a type of virus that the Gnostics, those who have been following Gnosis is self-knowledge. And they call this the archons. The archons is a virus that turns the person against him or herself, uses the faculty of the person to go rogue, to self-destruct, to separate the person from him or herself, the other, and the environment. Native American Indians called it Wetiko. There's a beautiful book by Paul Levy called The Spelling Wetiko. Native Hawaiian Indians called it Iipe. And everywhere you go in the world, people talk about this, not Westerners. And that's what we've been experiencing. And we're destroying ourselves. What the world is experiencing, to me, is what the world has been experiencing in a rapid accelerando and crescendo is a consciousness crisis, where it's getting more and more serious. We're talking about artificial intelligence, virtual reality, enhanced reality, augmented reality. We are tampering with things on a core level. You know that some ancient philosophies and religions predicted this. Zoroastrianism called it the Ahrimanic impulse. Ahriman, A-H-R-I-M-A-N. Rudolf Steiner, the founder of anthroposophy, also talked about it. That consciousness will get to a point where our discoveries and misuse of knowledge will get us to explore something that will seem to be so seductive but so dangerous at the same time, which is the singularity, merging with the digital world, and misusing technology. I'm not against technology. I'm all for the use of technology as a way to further humanity, the relations between humans, exploration of consciousness, understanding of spirituality, protecting the environment and everything in the environment because we are part of. And that's what the ancient taught us. But we shouldn't keep these things on a baby level understanding, okay? Which is what we're doing without having bad intention. We can do this all our lives and we cannot cause any amelioration or any positivity. And that's what governments want people to do. They create fields, experiences, philosophies, and various other things as a way to get people to lose themselves. This is called social engineering, social design, or crowd control, where the individual or individuals may think that this is grassroots movement, and you actually entrap yourself in something that is based on something that will resonate with you, and you will put your heart into it. Why? Because it has to resonate with you. It has to appeal to you. Otherwise, it would not work. Even you would propel it, defend it, and carry it on, and protect it. But at the end, it's actually social engineering that's based on entrapping you. Some religions are that as well. So we have to be very careful with what to believe in, because the reality is going to be a product of what we believe in. And reality is a product of what we believe. This is what we create. And that's why there's something called cognitive dissonance. And consciousness grows when you learn about things that you didn't know they existed for you to learn about. When you learn about them and you know, everything changes. World hegemony is based on controlling three things: energy, belief, and I'm blanking on the third thing. It's another slide, but it's coming later. Knowledge is the third one, pardon me. There are many things happening in my brain. Sometimes it reaches a bottleneck. Knowledge is the real power. So, and all of these three things, they connect together: knowledge, belief, and energy. And I'll let you riff on that later on to understand the consequence of these things. Some things from current medical research. Scientists now can use ultrasound to induce an opening in the blood-brain barrier, the most secure barrier that when you do this, you allow people with certain diseases and disorders, people with Parkinson's, with multiple sclerosis, they cannot benefit so much from the medication that they're taking. Why? Because the blood-brain barrier is so efficient, it only lets in 4% of the medication that they take into the brain. With ultrasound, you can thin it out to let in more of these medications. Researchers have come up with non-invasive ultrasound technology that clears the brain of neurotoxic amyloid plaques, structures that are responsible for memory loss and a decline in cognitive function in Alzheimer's patients. The new Alzheimer's treatment will fully restore memory function with zero damage to the surrounding brain tissue. These are not legal yet. These are not widely found yet. God knows why. Ultrasound frequencies can cause cancer cells to self-destruct. The Anthony Holland research I told you about. And let me explain a bit the image here before I talk about the next thing. These filaments around the nucleus are called microtubules. These are really tiny structures. They're in nanometers. And they vibrate sympathetically with sound. and they're very important to understand consciousness. They vibrate sympathetically with non-equal tempered scales in just intonation, the type that you would find in Indian classical music. This is what sound is about. We are programmed to experience sound on the tiniest level. So this is my talk. I know I covered a wide variety of different things, and it's the synthesis that's important. And I realize that I may have thrown at you many different concepts and some difficult concepts, and maybe some of them that you've never heard of, but I highly encourage you to explore them, to research them, or we can start with questions in a bit. Thank you very much.